I can do this. I can do it all by myself. I don't need any help, right? But that's wrong. We all need to have that help. We all need that support physically, emotionally, etc.
I see a lot of times people may be temporarily able to help, but then over time they get burnt out, get overwhelmed from that chronic stress of carrying everything. And I frequently tell my patients and families too that, it's about the long game. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You may be able to, but you're not going to be able to sprint a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now.
Right. Unfortunately, too many people don't get that support, don't take care of themselves, and it leads to burnout or illness or worse. And you've probably heard this statistic or something similar that when it comes to dementia, caregivers 70 years of age or older, about 2/3 predecease the person they're caring for. That's not only tragic, but it's preventable.
I am Dr. Mia, your pocket geriatrician, memory specialist on a mission to democratize aging knowledge to the sandwich generation so that you are empowered to care for the older adults in your life and care for yourself.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Mia podcast. Today I have a special guest, Bill Cohen, who is a encore career person who is a senior advisor as well as elder mediator and caregiver consultant. Bill's talented and loving mother, Sheila, lost her home to Hurricane Katrina, and then she lost her health, her ability to create beautiful art, and ultimately her life due to Alzheimer's disease. For almost 10 years, Bill was her primary caregiver and advocate, not just her son. He has turned his personal loss into his passion in supporting other caregivers and retired from state employment and entered his encore career 7 years ago. He leads caregiver support groups, memory cafes, is a speaker, mediator, certified senior advisor, and caregiver support consultant. And he currently lives in Portland, Oregon, but was a native New Englander. So thank you very much for joining us today, Bill.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you, Dr. Mia.
All right, thank you. So I know you've had a lot of experience both personally and professionally now since you retire from your state employment from the state of Oregon. I was just wondering whether you could tell us what you wish you had known earlier in your caregiving journey with your mom.
Oh, that I should have the legal documents in place and that I will feel some kind of guilt and I will have some denial, just like almost everybody else. I think one thing I did right at the beginning was joining a support group because that supported me and gave me a lot of help and advice to going forward. So that's one of the first things I tell people to do. Make sure the legal documents are in place. Your loved one is safe, getting good care, and that you get support and your self-care that you need.
Yeah. What kind of legal documents do you mean? Do you mean healthcare power of attorney or durable power of attorney or any other documents?
Right. And the will obviously is something that needs to be, but that's an after the fact thing. But what's more important are, as you mentioned, the durable power of attorney for legal and financial, and the advanced directive or living will, which appoints the health power of attorney. Those are vital. I can give a real good example right off the bat about that, how it's helpful. Soon after the hurricane, they had been evacuated. They were in North Carolina, I believe not far from you, Wilmington, actually. And we were going through the advanced directive with my mom. I was asking the questions, and there was a very vivid case back then that was in the news in the mid 2000s. And I said to Mom this question because she was very aware of it. Mom, do you want to end up like Terri Schiavo, the woman in Florida who was in a persistent vegetative state for years? And Mom was very clear, absolutely not. Did not want that. And I was able to communicate that to the family. This is what my mother wants. This is what we'll do. And that was really a gift to me because I didn't have to make those really difficult decisions. It was hard enough to go through it emotionally. So yeah, that advance directive of the living will is very, very important.
Absolutely.
Because then you
And
can't even advocate for your loved one.
right, if you don't know what they want. And sometimes I see the opposite happen too, where an older adult makes those documents but don't communicate with their loved
Yes.
ones who are their default surrogate decision makers. And then it gets into a situation where no matter what's written down in the document, if their loved ones don't agree, then the live person almost always trumps what's written on paper. Yeah, yeah. But I also wanted to hear from your perspective, Bill. I know, obviously, you're a son. You were taking care of your mother as a male caregiver, and Alzheimer's disease affects women more than men, although most of the caregivers are women. So,
As
can
well.
you share with us what are some unique needs or challenges that male caregivers run into?
Absolutely. I like to cite the statistic I heard a while back from Teepa Snow, a very well-known dementia trainer, where she said about the time I was starting my journey in the mid 2000s that about 1 out of every 5 caregivers for dementia were men. Now it's more like 1 out of every 3 and growing. So, and in my case, I don't even have children or grandchildren. So I have never really been in that nurturing role until I took care of my mom. And men tend to do it differently. Uh, they look at it more like a project. They look at it more like a series of tasks, a job to do. And they, unfortunately, they rarely go for counseling or for support groups. Again, I think this is changing. So, and of course, in many cases, if there's any female family member, it tends to fall to them. But again, I think more and more men are stepping up into that role, as it should be.
Right, right. So, what do you see these male caregivers do or don't do? And I know you said that they may be hesitant to join a support group or think of it more like a project. How would you compare with a female caregiver who might look at caregiving in a different role, in a different way?
Well, and that's a complicated situation or question. I'll try to give the best simple answer I can. That again, women tend to be in that nurturing, caring, caretaker or caregiver role for their families with kids, etc. Although again, I think these are changing. I think the important thing, like in my case, is that I had other family members, women, my aunts, my wife, certainly a cousin or two that helped support me while I could take care of mom. So it was collaborative very much at the beginning while we were trying to get mom and my stepfather back on track after the hurricane. And then it became mostly myself, but with some support from others. And I think that's important is to look for support because it can come from many directions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that a lot of male caregivers that I see clinically also think that they can do everything on their own. And
Right.
they're very hesitant to ask for help. What
Mhm.
would you say to those male caregivers if they're listening now?
Absolutely. That you should look at it not so much as that, well, this is somebody else's job, as that this is my loved one, this is my mother, this is my wife, this is my sister, that this is something I can and should do because in many cases they took care of me. So I'm going to return the favor. I mean, I don't, not going to get into religion too much, but one of the 10 commandments, honor thy mother and thy father. There was no question that I was going to step into that role from my mother.
Absolutely. And I know this is where sometimes different family members could potentially disagree about different ways of caring for, say, for example, their older parent,
Mm-hmm.
and each adult child may also have a different relationship with the
Mm-hmm.
person who has dementia or memory problems. What might be some practical steps or advice that you would suggest to folks who might be, in conflict with another family member when it comes to caring for someone with dementia?
Mm-hmm. Great question. I was fortunate in that respect that my family knew that I had my name on the power of attorney and the advance directive. And They may have had some opinions or suggestions, and it was always in mom's best interest. So, but they knew that I had the final say. My name was on the paper, so I could make those final decisions. But yes, unfortunately, too many families have trouble ordering pizza, let alone deciding how to take care of their loved one, where, who, why, etc. And the important thing is that one, right from the beginning, that families need to talk about it, need to have communication. Yes, there are going to be other people who have other opinions. They have ulterior motives. They have hidden agendas. They may be long distance. But the important thing is to focus on your person with dementia. What are their needs? How can we take care of them? Because they either can't take care of themselves or can't make their own decisions. So where I am finding increasingly, finding myself in the role of a neutral, objective third party and helping families come to those decisions. I don't make the decision for them. I keep them talking, help them come to an agreement that everybody can live with. It keeps it out of the courts, keeps it out away from attorney fees, and it's private. And I tell them, of course, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a social worker. I can't fix your family issues, but I will keep us talking so you come to a good agreement. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a family out here in the Northwest, 3 different states, 4 different cities, 4 siblings, completely divided down the middle. I remember one family member saying after we'd started the mediation, said, well, at least we're not yelling at each other.
Could be
So,
worse.
of course. So that was a win-win right there. And also, the man that hired me at one point went off camera, off microphone, and says, I'll be listening. He didn't like how the way things are going. But we kept talking, kept moving forward, got to an agreement. And after he says, I wasn't happy with the outcome, but you did your job. You did what we needed you to do to keep our family on track and take care of our mom. So the bottom line was that the man that hired me wasn't happy with the outcome, but he told me, you did a good job. This is what we needed so we could take care of our mom. And he gave me a really nice testimonial afterwards.
That's great. And how did you keep all the siblings talking when there was so much tension and conflict?
Well, the important thing is that you allow each person their time to talk. I had talked to them individually as well. I knew what their position was, what they wanted, what they would prefer to happen, and just kept on bringing those options to the table and say, okay, A, B, or C. Do you have some other options? Or let's keep talking. What do you like about this one? What do you don't like about that one? Each get their chance to talk, keep personal out of it. Because again, I can't fix their family dynamics, but it ended up paying off. The mom is
Yeah.
actually doing quite well.
That's great. That's great. I think you did a great job in terms of helping that family. So that gets to my next question is, what I know you said you're not a counselor, you're not a social worker. What type of training goes into a certified senior advisor? I know you also had training to be a mediator. Can you tell us a
Mhm.
little bit more about what that entailed?
Since we were just talking about the elder mediator, again, I'm trained to do so. I took a class over a long weekend, and interestingly, I have been like the facilitator, peacemaker, go between with my family, and then I facilitated meetings at work, and of course, with support groups, you're facilitating. So it's kind of like something that came naturally to me. So it didn't take much more to go beyond and become trained as well. That's all. And then as far as certified senior advisor, that takes a holistic approach to caregiving. I like to use the analogy from social work with kids of wraparound, because I don't think we hear that term being used in senior care. And because we should not be operating in silos, we should be collaborating, working together, putting together a team to help take care of the person who can't take care of themselves and get the whole family and the other professionals, housing, legal, financial, in-home care, et cetera, get them on the team. And so it takes that holistic, broad perspective approach. And actually, what's interesting is many, if not most, of certified senior advisors are in the financial fields like mortgage, real estate, insurance, because it's not just about making the suitable recommendation, but it's also about taking care of our most vulnerable population that are from predatory practices, fraud, and abuse. So that's the approach
Absolutely.
I wanted to take from the very beginning, is working with everybody and focus on the person with dementia.
Absolutely. And I think that is the financial piece of things is so much of a factor in where the person gets their care, how much money to spend. And that's oftentimes a topic of disagreement as well
Mm-hmm.
among the family. Um, that's great. Is there a list of certified senior advisors, people who sort of have this training that's holistic and people could, for example, find
Mm-hmm.
senior advisors close to them?
Absolutely. There is what's called the Society for Certified Senior Advisors out of Colorado, and that's where I became. I took courses and took a nice long exam. I think it's the last long one I'm going to take, and it covered all the aspects of senior care, whether it's financial, legal, medical, every aspect of it. A lot of it I had from my background professionally and personally. And then I, of course, learned a lot for taking the courses. So
That's
that's
great.
what
Yeah.
led me to find out, to ask about why are all these financial questions. And that's when I heard that many, if not most of the people are in that sector.
Gotcha. And we'll include a link to the Society of Senior Certified Advisors as well in our show notes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, absolutely. So, how does one know whether, say, for example, if our listeners have family disputes or disagreements, how do you know when to say look for a counselor versus a social worker versus a senior advisor?
So, as you probably know, not only is every family different, but if you've seen one case of dementia, you've seen just one case, right? Even though our
Hmm.
common threads running throughout. The important thing is that families talk about it. They don't kick the can down the road, shove it under the rug, so to speak. Pardon the couple of metaphors, is that have those discussions. You may need to bring in an elder law attorney. You may need to bring in other professionals like myself. And again, depending upon the situation, there's very few people that do what I do, a caregiving support consultant. There are people that are similar, like aging life care managers, caseworkers, the housing advisors can work in that case, but very few are taking that holistic approach and being the coordinator for everything. So uh, each family needs to decide what they need, and if they are at an impasse, if they can't come to an agreement what's in best interest of their loved one, then they need some kind of a advisor, whether it's an elder mediator or similar, and help them work through that. Because again, many families, many members will have a hidden agenda. They'll have ulterior motives, and it's not in the best interest of the loved one. The important thing, if you're going to go through mediation, is everybody has to agree to going through the mediation. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
Yeah. So the person who um, is in a family who might be interested in mediation has to first take the step to get other family members to agree to even have a third party
Mm-hmm.
uh, to be in the picture.
All right. Otherwise, you're going to probably end up in court. It's going to cost a lot of time and money. I mean, I see it
Yeah.
very often. Unfortunately, one family member may have power of attorney and the advance directive and health representative, and then somebody else disagrees. They don't like what they're doing, or they have ulterior motives, and they take them to court to get conservatorship or guardianship, and a judge is going to have to decide for them. Again, that gets very lengthy and costly, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it also takes a long time, I think, in those situations where decisions need to be made, but there's a contested decision maker. Even as a healthcare professional, sometimes those are the trickiest situations because, do you go by the person who currently has the power of attorney based on the paperwork, or do you go by the person who's trying to get the power of attorney? And oftentimes the patient who is having memory problems is kind of caught in the middle and
Mm-hmm.
are not getting the best care,
Right.
unfortunately.
Say a
Yeah.
quick aside. I do two different support groups. One is monthly through the Alzheimer's Association, the other one, and it's in person. I also have a virtual one through a local nonprofit that's weekly, and we alternate online and in person. But both groups we have in the past referred to a family member as Aunt Awful.
Oh,
You don't want an Aunt Awful or any
oh
other
no.
family member like that. So,
Oh no.
yeah,
Yeah,
well, we need to bring a little appropriate humor into the situation wherever we can.
absolutely. And I think those time that's extra layers of stress. It's just not only the stress of caring for someone who has memory problems and perhaps questionable insight, but also additional stress from that conflict with their
Mm-hmm.
family members who want other things. When you said ulterior motives, what kind of things are people looking to get?
So I'll give you some examples and also tell you I have some advice on those situations. So it can be financial, such as, oh, we shouldn't be spending that money on a care facility. We keep them at home, and we'll keep the costs down, because what they're doing is, I want my share of mom and or dad's assets whenever they pass away. They're not
Mm-hmm.
thinking most about what does your loved one need, right? It can be just they don't agree with how the care is being done, or by who or where, like I was talking about with that mediation case. It could be a whole range of things. It could just be sibling rivalries. It may be that one or two family members are carrying the load, and others just, they're either at a distance, they're too busy, they say, I can't deal with it, I never had a good relationship with so and so, so I'm not getting involved, I can't deal with it. These are the kind of things, unfortunately, happen. I tell people that, look, even if it doesn't matter if you're involved at all, legally, financially, at a distance or up close, you are a caregiver. You're part of the care team. And there's a lot of things you can do that aren't directly involved the hands-on care. It could be handling the finances. It could be doing research. It could be ordering things. It can be picking up things around town and bringing it to where the person with dementia is, or the other condition. There's a lot of different things you can do. And a quick advice: when you have people have a lot of information, a lot of opinions. I was, again, fortunate that my family members had mom's best interests at heart. But when somebody is like that, like they're not helping, for instance, you can
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, that's a great idea. Why don't you take that on? And you're either going to get one of two answers. Both are a win-win for you. One is either they're going to be quiet, shut up, or they'll take it on. They'll do it, which is what both of which you wanted them to do. The other side of it is when somebody has uninformed opinions, they have, again, ulterior motives, things like that, and they are saying things. And you can say, you have my permission, that that's an interesting statement. That's an interesting idea. I'll think about it, and then just ignore it if it's not in the best interest of your family member that can't take care of themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a lot easier for a neutral third party to say than the
Mm-hmm.
person who might be on the receiving end of that different opinion. Because
Mm-hmm.
I certainly know sometimes we revert back to our teenage roles in our family of origin. I just become a more cranky version of myself when I go back home, and I don't know what it is. But yeah, sometimes those sibling dynamics also come back into play. But I've certainly had patients. For example, I'm thinking of a patient of mine who is no longer my patient because she passed away. But when she was alive, her local daughter was a superb caregiver, very attentive, did everything. However, she had a brother who lived farther away, was neither financially interested in helping nor physically, emotionally invested in helping. And it was very challenging for that daughter to know what to do with that brother because she needed the help,
Mm-hmm.
but the brother just wasn't able to or wasn't willing to put in help whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. I like to cite there's a caregiving course called Savvy Caregiver, which was developed with an evidence based course by Emory University. And they talk about family giver types, but also that family can be however you define it. Support can come from so many different sources: friends, neighbors, ex-coworkers, charitable organizations, a lot of places you can pull from. I'll tell you a quick story about sometimes all you need to do is ask, because people say, how can I help? Right? So mom was on hospice. She's in a wonderful institution. The care was exceptional. Unfortunately, the coffee was institutional. I get on social media and I said, can somebody please bring me a mocha? Two friends from two different coffee places showed up at the front desk. All you have to do is ask. People want to help.
Wow. That's great. And I think how did you just post on your own, Facebook page? Did you create some sort of caring bridge website to update people? I'm just curious in terms of the actual logistics of asking for help, which is such a difficult thing for people to actually ask for.
Yeah, it was primarily social media with my primarily Facebook at that time. Again, I was still doing in my employment. I hadn't started my encore career, so primarily Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. And what went through your mind when you said, how did you even go about thinking, wow, maybe someone can actually bring her coffee. Maybe it doesn't have to be me.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. How did you get the idea that someone else could just bring her coffee and it didn't have to be you?
Oh, I just knew that friends are always saying to me, is there any way we can help? We knew that you're going through a difficult time. You're holding a full-time job, although I was on family leave, and I knew that people are happy to help, and I didn't worry about who. I just knew at least one person would showed up. Like I said, two did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I think for even for myself, it's really difficult to ask for help. I feel like there's a shame that it's logically that there's nothing shameful about asking for help, but emotionally there very much feels like, well, why couldn't I do this myself? Like
Mm-hmm.
I will be a bother to other people. What would you
Mm-hmm.
say to folks who might be feeling that way?
And that goes back to our question earlier about male caregivers. I should have added this. You reminded me that a lot of men says, I can handle this. I can do this. I can do it all by myself. I don't need any help, right? But that's wrong. We all need to have that help. We all need that support physically, emotionally, etc.
Yeah. And I see a lot of times people may be temporarily able to help, but then over time they get burnt out. They
Absolutely.
get overwhelmed from that chronic stress of carrying
Mhm.
everything. And I frequently tell my patients and families too that, it's about the long game. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You may be able to sprint today, but you're
Mhm.
not going to be able to sprint a year from now or 2 years from
Mhm.
now or 3 years from now.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, too many people don't get that support, don't take care of themselves, and leads to burnout or illness or worse. And you've probably heard this statistic or something similar that when it comes to dementia, caregivers 70 years of age or older, about two-thirds predecease the person they're caring for. That's not only tragic, but it's preventable. Go
Yeah.
to your doctor, go for a massage, go do yoga, do meditation, go for a walk, anything to take that stress off and take care of yourself as well, so you can take better care of them.
Absolutely. And I've seen it happen where the person who's the primary caregiver passes away before the person with dementia. And oftentimes that really leaves the person with dementia in a much worse
Mm-hmm.
state, and all of a sudden they don't have a primary caregiver anymore. Um and it doesn't have to be meditation and massage. While all of
Mm-hmm.
those are great, if someone enjoys golfing, asking
Mm-hmm.
for help for a couple hours while you go golf might be
Mm-hmm.
something that someone needs, but it's really very individualized in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what gives you joy and refills your cup.
I also love the exercise in that Savvy Caregiver class where you ask the caregivers, if you had 2 hours of free time, no caregiving responsibilities, or a whole day, or a long weekend, what would you do with that time? And it makes them think about, oh, I'd love to go for coffee with some friends. I'd love to go away for a weekend and just sleep. So they think about, okay, how can I get that respite? How can I get that break? How can I make that time away from caregiving happen? And sometimes you have to be assertive with family members. I am burning out. I'm sick. I need a week off. Somebody, you perhaps, can come and take care of mom. And that's very
Yeah.
important, because if I get sicker, you're going to have to anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Bill, for this really insightful episode and for talking with us. Anything else you want to share with our audience?
Well, again, from the beginning, talk about it. Don't delay things. Join a support group. Get the legal documents in place. There's a lot, especially for dementia. There's a lot of wonderful information on the Alzheimer's Association website, alz.org. And my website is Cohen, 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 caregivingsupport.com. A lot of information there on how to reach me and get support.
Thank you so much, Bill. And we'll include Bill's contact information in this show notes as well. See you next time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with someone who might like it. Review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this episode. And join my email list to directly communicate with me on miayanggmd.com. I do not speak for any employer, funder, but myself. For your or your loved one's specific health challenges, this podcast serves as a general educational purposes. Original music by Grant Wills. This podcast is produced by Builder Librarian. And finally, let's all put a hand on our heart and repeat after me. I will love myself so that I can love on others.